every so often I get a candidate who does not fall into the normal kind of job function of what I see on this channel: product managers, developers, program managers, marketing, general managers, right? Senior leaders. This is a senior UX researcher. Awesome. And they were targeting a job. Let me look at my notes here. They were targeting a job at, they were targeting Meta. Cool. So they were already at a very, we'll call it well-known tech company that is used by 100 million plus probably users in the United States. And this specific leadership principle was invent and simplify. And the question I asked is, after selecting an app that they have on their phone, I wanted them to walk me through why they love it. And then I ask a follow-up question around how would you make it better? And I want to give you a little bit of spoiler alert up front because it's important. How you, the candidate, engage with the content material or the question that you're asked, even if it's outside of the scope of what you would normally do for your job, is very telling to me as an interviewer, as it helps me understand, are you, kind of very focused in on what you do, very narrow, or do you have kind of the ability to get a bit of breadth in your abilities as you go, right? Because as you think about progressing through leadership ranks in a company, you need to take on more and more and more. You need to be able to see more broadly across the company. So this helps reveal a bit of that in the terms of the way the candidate thinks about the question. But also, and this is, as of recording this video, is January 2025, the introduction of AI and agents and retrieval augmented AI generation, all of these things are going to make, I know everyone says it's the death of employees and work's going to go away, blah, 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 blah. I don't agree with any of that. I actually think that for those who know how to use it, it's going to empower them to do more. It's going to amplify their ability to work, which means whereas this person was a UX researcher, which is a highly specialized role inside of tech companies, I think that over time what we're going to see is tech companies get smaller because the employee bases can do more work, they get more broad. So the age of the specialist is likely kind of going to decline, and we're going to see an explosion of the kind of generalist. Like a person like me with a product manager background, I used to joke that I'm a jack of all trades, master of some. Not master of none, master of some. But what I have seen in my experience with AI is I can do a whole lot more, which leads me to many other lines of inquiry, which allows me to kind of explore a bunch of different things and learn really quickly and how do I process that and then turn it into action. So in this case, if you're a candidate now, 2025 and beyond, as we move into the era of AI impacting the workplace, you have to start thinking about how do you present to a company as someone who is thinking broader than just your very narrow scope of thing, because your very narrow scope of thing might go away and then you're kind of SOL. So that's a bit of a problem. So it's a unique kind of inflection point of time now where I think when this interview was done, ChatGPT 3 hadn't been announced yet. So it's a very things can change real fast in the tech industry, which is why I love tech. But specifically now in 2025, this is something to think about in terms of how are you presenting as someone who can operate outside of your very narrow lane, if you've only ever been in a very narrow lane, for your roles.
Do you have an iPhone or Android phone that you use every day?
Yes, an iPhone.
iPhone, perfect. So pick an app on the phone that you use every day because you love it, not because you have to. So like FaceTime doesn't count, mail doesn't count, right? But an app that you made the decision to download because you love the experience, and it can't be your current company's app either. And I want you to first start with what's the app and why do you love it?
I would say, practically speaking, it would be Uber Eats. Okay, so yeah, I was saying that Uber Eats is the app, and I would say that the reason why I love it is I'm too busy to cook. So in grad school, I generally made a homemade meal every day. But then since I started working, that wasn't really feasible for many reasons. And so I feel like Uber Eats allows me to still eat healthy, even though I have kind of time constraints that don't allow me to be able to cook homemade meals. So so that would be the app that I would say realistically at the moment.
No, I don't actually.
One of the reasons why I ask this question, and I tend to focus on anyone who's closer to the customer, UX, UI, product managers, sometimes developers. And what I'm really trying to get at is, are you a builder? And do you really have customers in mind? But also what I'm trying to understand is how you go about improving things. And so this is one of those questions where I'm trying to take something out of your everyday life. In this case, he's talking about Uber Eats. And the follow-on is going to be really what we're trying to wrap around is make it better. And how would you do it? And it really is revealing about things that you spend your brain cycles on and whether or not this is something that you excel at or just do.
Don't I usually know the name of the company that is mentioned because it's a small selection of apps that people use. I actually don't know who is the CEO of Uber Eats. But let's pretend I did. Joe. Joe is head of product at Uber Eats, and Joe has found you somehow. You got a phone call and he says, Jonathan, I hear you are a super talented guy, but I also, most importantly, hear that you love our app. We have a design sprint coming up where we have surprisingly free resources. So I would like you to tell me what feature you would propose that we design and build for this app to satisfy users like yourself.
Yeah. I would say a feature that I would be really interested in having is something that allows me to know like kind of new restaurants that appear on the app. A lot of times I can kind of just resort to a lot of the same restaurants. So like there might be like my favorite Indian restaurant or my favorite Thai restaurant, etc. But I would love for there to be a feature as the new companies on board with the app to share that information with users, which I haven't seen. So if that does exist, to make that feature a bit more prominent or to develop that feature if it doesn't exist. And so that way I can try out new restaurants in the city from the comfort of my own home.
Why do you think this would be something worth pursuing?
I think that it would be great for the user or for the customer because again, like they would be able to order from different restaurants in the city, and they would be able to learn more. Like, so for example, if there were a new Italian restaurant, they would be able to try it out, and it would be easy to find. And then I think it would be great for the companies as well, because a lot of times when you're a new company on an existing platform, it's hard to generate traffic because people are so familiar with the restaurants that they usually eat at. And so to be able to be featured relatively prominently on the app, it might lead more customers to try out this new place, which is great for the business and then great for the user or the customer because they get to try out the new place that no one's tried yet.
So because those were two follow-up questions that were kind of tightly coupled, this is definitely a personal choice for the candidate, which is fine. The point of this question is to see how you think and how you would, are you spending time and cycles on an app that you use a lot and like or claim to like or love, to think about how it would be better for you. And in this case, for this particular answer, the candidate has opted for wanting to discover more restaurants. Now, it's actually quite illustrative and highlights some challenges with answers that you give, which is, are you exhibiting your own cultural biases, age demographic biases, location, geographic biases, right? So if I am a customer of Uber Eats and I live in the town I live in here in Boulder, Colorado, Boulder County, a town called Louisville, there's maybe 20,000 people live here. There's not a lot of restaurants. So it's not like there's this constant iteration of restaurants coming on. So I don't know how important this is. And I don't know that I care. I mean, maybe it's nice, but sure, but I don't know that it services the customers of, say, the small area, the likely delivery range of where I live, where things are a bit more spread out versus, say, San Francisco or New York or even Austin, where the delivery range might include a far greater number of people and potentially users. Okay, that's one issue. Two, worth pursuing. Well, as a UX, UI person, as this person was a researcher, no less, he talks about how people get comfortable, but people trend towards what's reliable. It's why McDonald's and chain restaurants have been so successful, is people want a consistent experience. And not everybody is always seeking the new. That certainly is more of a age demographic thing, like younger millennials and Gen Z, et cetera, might be more likely to want to always be trying new things and new experiences, and that's great and that's fine. But he doesn't really make a great case for why this is something worth pursuing, other than it works for him. Which again, the way the question is targeted, it's easy to interpret it that way, but he's not interviewing for a date with me. He's interviewing for a job with me. And the job with me part is demonstrate that you can think about my business. You can think about our customers, however diverse they might be, and the ability to segment them up, what's good for the business, how it's going to generate more revenue, why it's good for, in this case, two-sided marketplace. He does talk a little bit about how it gets more discoverability, but is that a good thing? Have we vetted these restaurants? Do they have a good delivery rate? Is the food experience great? You could ruin the app if you recommend a new, I don't want to seem like I'm picking on everybody, like, okay, let's new generic restaurant X. I didn't want to say like Indian or Mexican or whatever, and have someone be like mad that I don't like Indian food. Non-bread is lovely. Chicken tandoori is my favorite though. But that you would have a case where a new restaurant comes online, it gets recommended, tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of users mog that restaurant now because it's on a featured page. They can't keep up with demand. The service delivery is terrible. The quality of the food is actually bad because no one actually did any work because the processes of the company, there's a whole number of reasons why that might be wrong. And he doesn't really get into any of that. So it's very, very revealing about how this person thinks about product design, product delivery, versus in this case, he is a UX researcher. So maybe you're not thinking about those things, that's fine, but that's what's getting revealed in the context of this answer.
You are stating in a tautological way that this would be good for the business. Why would this be good for the business?
So when I was saying business, I was thinking the new restaurant, but I think it would be good.
So okay.
Yeah, I think it would be good for the business Uber Eats because it would make it a more dynamic experience. I think that users, depending on the market that you live in, so I'm currently not at home, but I live in Las Vegas, and there's always new restaurants coming up. And so to be able to know what the new restaurant is, to be able to order from there and try it out, I think that it would make it a more dynamic experience, especially in cities like Las Vegas or San Francisco that are kind of filled with many restaurants and new restaurants and people always wanting to explore what those new culinary experiences are. So
I'm going to challenge that statement because two issues. One, I want you to address the paradox of choice and how that might impact customers actually using the app or not. But two, I'm gonna argue that Las Vegas, San Francisco, even Los Angeles, I don't know the answer. I'm going to hypothesize that they don't represent a significant enough portion of actual total orders to be a standing statement of, as far as market penetration goes, that I, as the Uber Eats guy, cares that there's new restaurants popping up all the time in Vegas. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. They might be organized internally by cities. I don't know. And so I'm gonna push that aside and willfully ignore that fact. But just kind of walk me through how you would address the potentiality for paradox of choice becoming an issue in this regard for the end user, but also defend the statement that I care, as the head of Uber Eats product, I care that Vegas has a restaurant turnover challenge, when in reality, Peoria, that's always the city we use when we talk about everyday America, but Peoria probably does not.
Yeah. So just to clarify, by paradox of choice, you mean like kind of having a larger amount of choice actually confines your
it causes the customers to shut down, right? They got, you take someone from Pakistan who's grown up in Pakistan, who's gone to grocery stores in Pakistan their whole life, and they've had a choice for soap or two, and they come to, a King Soopers here in Boulder, Colorado, and they go, you have a whole row for soap? How do you make a decision? This is crazy, right?
Right. Yeah. So I think that there are different ways that you can incentivize users in that regard, which the company already does. So for example, like having free delivery options for new restaurants, or maybe having like a 5% off coupon for new restaurants that would incentivize users to actually want to order from those restaurants rather than kind of going to their the restaurant that they're most familiar with, or the restaurant that they're most accustomed to ordering from. So I think that there are ways that you can still incentivize users while increasing the volume of options that they have at their disposal. So, and again, one of the benefits that the company already engages in some of the practices that would. Yeah. So So yeah, so I think yeah, like having those incentives would get people to be more inclined to try out the new restaurants. And then I think, I wanted to ask a clarifying question around your second point. So were you saying that like in a place like Peoria, there are less new restaurants coming onto the marketplace that would not?
Yeah, it's not only a function of less restaurants coming online, but like I think it's just your turnover of restaurants is probably lower. That's a guess. I don't know,
No.
but I think it's a safe guess. And your restaurant density is nowhere near what a place like San Francisco or Las Vegas would have, right? Because you just have the population density of Vegas writ large, just by virtue of what Vegas offers, which is an entertainment product, in San Francisco, which is more like, New York, maybe Dallas, but there's very few cities in America that are like that are just vertically built and so dense with people that necessitates a higher number of restaurants per capita or per square mile than, say, Peoria, right? Or even, where I live here, in a 5 mile radius, I'm sure there's a large number of restaurants, but I'm guessing that it's far fewer than what's available to you. I could be
Yeah.
wrong.
Well, I'm not sure about the total like kind of user statistics, but I would assume that just as someone who doesn't drive and uses Uber, I would assume that Uber Eats is not that popular in kind of secondary markets like
Excuse me.
Peoria, for example. And yeah, so compared to like cities like Boston or DC or New York or LA, Vegas, etc., I don't think that much of the revenue is coming from kind of these smaller markets.
Yeah.
And so, I think that even though it might not be fully applicable in a place like Peoria, the person still has access to the app, and if they ever were to travel, for example, to Chicago, they'd be able to utilize this feature. And I think that that could also be an exciting way for them to, like, if they're not from Chicago, that can be an exciting way for them to learn about different restaurants in the city, or like kind of new restaurants in the city to try out. And so,
First, let's address the follow-up questions before we do kind of a closeout on this candidate. It was interesting that he didn't, like, as a researcher, it's interesting he didn't really know the paradox of choice as a concept right off the bat. That was interesting, but okay, not a red flag at all. But he doesn't. I get that this is a UX researcher, so they're not necessarily going to always be thinking about a problem the way a product manager would, or even a dev manager. But Uber Eats is going to care about solving this problem if it has a direct impact on reducing churn of customers, reducing their customer acquisition costs, increasing order average frequency, increasing order average size, increasing the rating of the app, right? Maybe the ratings go up over time because people use it more and they're happy about it. These are business metrics that matter to Uber Eats. And at no point in this discussion did the candidate really ever try to consider like what's good for the business, right? It was more of a, well, I want this because I want to discover more. That's fine. You can state what you want as a customer. Turns out that individual customers are often wrong about what the masses want, but that's fine. But when pressed about is this good for the business, he really wasn't able to defend his answer or even present any meaningful metrics which he might then be able to state are valuable to Uber. So that's a little bit challenging for me as an interviewer. Now, when I think about the totality of the answer, and I'm gonna read the feedback I would have read into the room for this customer, I wrote, this was another instance, of the candidate not exploring beyond a very superficial analysis of what would be good, new, or novel change to an existing application. The candidate did not address core issues of whether this change would be good for the customer base beyond exploring their own personal biases. There was no discussion of utilization of metrics to govern the impact of the proposed change. Further, given the obviousness of the proposed change, the lack of the discussion as to whether or not this may have already been tried and rejected was missed. So that last point's actually interesting, and I didn't bring it up in the discussion, but when I ask this question, I always try to listen for, are they just blurting out an answer, or do they actually stop and consider, well, I don't know if this has been tried or not, right? Or do they even, because you have to assume that most companies that you're dealing with aren't full of idiots, and there's usually a reason why something hasn't been done. Sometimes what you come up with is new and novel, but it could have been a discussion. And in this specific instance, I'm guessing, as a lifelong product management executive, I'm guessing that this discussion was had. I've never used Uber Eats, so it's a little bit unfair for me to have this like state with such certainty. But I'm guessing if it didn't exist in the app when this customer was using it, and it hadn't existed in the app in the totality of the time that it had been there, my guess is it didn't further the interests of the business, right? If highlighting new businesses, new restaurants that came online served to create a bad delivery experience for the customers, that's bad. If it caused customers to churn, if it caused them to not return to the app and therefore they're ordering less, that's all bad. Why would this possibly happen? Well, if you have a new restaurant set up, I don't know if you've ever been to a Chipotle or any of these restaurants, when you go in, they now have racks with, A through G and H through M and for last name orders, right? It makes it super easy for the drivers to come in and find the bag and pull it and go. But if you're a brand new restaurant, you don't have that. Someone walks in, they got to find the hostess. Hey, I'm here to pick up an order. That's a mess. That just adds time and it creates a problem. So you highlight this new restaurant, right? And now you get a bunch of calls coming in like, hey, I heard you the hot new thing, right? It would be like Keith Lee, the TikTok guy, right? Saying, oh, definitely got to go here. Well, that restaurant, yeah, they might be blessed by all that new business, but for Uber Eats, whose core business is we deliver food to you in a timely way and your food is hot and ready to be eaten, that can be problematic. And so none of that was layered into this discussion. So as an interviewer, I'm looking at this candidate like, okay, well, this isn't directly applicable to their job. Fine, because they're a UX researcher, but do they even like show the intellectual curiosity to explore these things, or have they even had these sorts of conversations where they have the ability to engage on a topic, maybe not with the high level functioning of a senior product manager and whatever, which fine, but like how do they approach the problem space? And in this case, and I even made a note, which I said another instance of, meaning throughout this interview of the 5 questions I asked this candidate, he was engaging at a very superficial level, which is problematic for you as a candidate. Because again, you're trying to convince me through your depth of experience that you can do this job at this company and likely exceed expectations. And so this is one where he didn't quite get there. And there's a lot to learn for anybody who's watching this. And hopefully you got something out of it.